So, Secret Garden is the latest series presented by David Attenborough, and it's pretty different from most of his other series because it basically just follows different gardens around the UK. Each episode focuses on a different garden. There's going to be 5 episodes, each from different parts of the country, and each dealing with a different type of garden. This one is called Oxfordshire, and it's set at this really interesting house that's next to a river, and it's very unique because they seem to own quite a bit of land. Like, their garden is like quite a big area. It's not a normal sized garden, and that I would say this definitely doesn't reflect the average British garden, but it is still a pretty good episode, so I don't really mind that. But it's interesting because I feel like there's a more of an obvious seasonal shift in this particular one, because that river sometimes bursts its banks when the water level gets really high. There's a proper difference throughout the year of when the river's high and when it's low, because when the water is high, a lot of the garden's submerged, so it's not actually accessible to a lot of the animals, but when it's low, a lot of the woodland becomes more available, so it's really interesting. I really like this episode, and I actually found it quite comforting and kind of cozy. So this episode kind of reminds me of Kingdom, in that it follows a group of animals, but instead of 5 years, it just follows it over the course of one, not even really. And I do like that because you get to know the different cast of characters in the garden. The main ones we focus on, I would say, are the kingfishers. You get quite a lot of time with the kingfishers, and I've got to say, this is the best kingfisher stuff I've ever seen in one of these series, because usually you just get kingfishers, just flying around the water, maybe catching a fish every now and again, but you don't really get much more of them. This is a much more in-depth look at kingfisher behaviour. You see them courting, you see them mating, you see them fighting over fish. That's a really good sequence at the end of the episode when the kingfishers are fighting. The guy who owns the property is just watching them from a distance. It's really good. I like how the humans are interspersed throughout the episode, because it kind of just shows you them just going about their daily lives. All these really interesting dramas are going on literally in their garden. I've never seen kingfisher chicks fledging. Again, it's all stuff that a lot of birds do. Pretty much all birds do this stuff, but it was really cool seeing it in kingfishers because they're just really iridescent, really beautiful looking birds. They're probably the most attractive birds that we've got in Britain. But I would say, while the kingfishers are maybe the main presence in the episode, the ducks are probably the main characters. Doris the mallard is the only named animal in the episode, and I'd say she's the one that's got the most relatable arc. We basically follow her from when she mates with a male, to then looking after her eggs, and then looking after her chicks. And it's a really good drama. I think the stuff at the start with the mallards competing for her and then mating was really good. I think mallards are kind of a given presence along British waterways, but we do take them for granted. They're actually quite attractive birds. I think mallard ducks are pretty cool. So I'm glad they got a good chunk of the screen time here. The stuff with the eggs was really interesting because they've all got to hatch at the same time. And in order to coordinate that, they actually call out to each other from within the eggs. I had no clue about that, but that was really interesting to see, and her looking after the ducklings is great as well. It looks like she manages to raise them all to fledging, which is actually pretty impressive. I used to see a lot of mallards along the canal, and you'd basically be watching the ducklings disappear week by week. And that brings us on to the main villain of the episode, and that is a very surprising one, and that is the otter. So the otter in this episode was pretty fantastic. I have never seen otters being treated as villains in a series before. Usually they're kind of comedic or likeable. This was actually really good because the otter is never named as well, and the otter's never really given a storyline. It's not given any backstory. It's not given any really challenges to follow. It is just the baddie of the episode, and I think that's great. Again, usually I'd be arguing against anthropomorphizing animals. You don't really need villains in these kind of stories, but as it's portrayed as a drama over the course of a year, I think it's good to have a villain, and I think the otter fitted that bill really well because it's really intimidating, in particular when it goes after Doris's ducklings, and she's basically luring it away, and this otter looks massive compared to them as well. I mean, they're not even ducklings at that point. They're kind of, near adulthood, but the otter is much bigger than them, and you see it just charging through the water towards them. There's some great shots of the ducks just swimming along. The otter is just surging towards them through the water. It's great, and then Doris lures it away. That's a really good bit of drama. Really good use of the otter as a villain. As I say, I'd never seen that before in a series like this before, and it actually really worked for me. I really like that. The other main animal we follow is the bankful. At the start, I was kind of like, okay, that's going to be, a throwaway sequence. We see it avoiding the lawnmower, and that's, fine. But when it goes into the woodland, that's really interesting. We see it pairing up. We see it raising its offspring. We see it evading grass snakes. The grass snake was really cool as well because the grass snake looked really sinister. Grass snakes are another animal we don't really see. When you think of British reptiles, you tend to think of adders in these series. You tend to get more of them. You don't really get a lot of grass snake footage, even though they're the biggest ones in the UK. Again, the grass snake never really gets near them, but it's still a really good sequence. Nivo's got to make its way back through the flooded forest back to the lawn when it started off the episode in. And that was really good as well. And speaking of villains, the kites were also used well here. And I know they're scavengers, but you never really think of them as being a threat. They're, quite big birds, and they are quite intimidating. And so I thought they were used pretty well here as well. There's a nocturnal sequence at night. We see bats and shrews and mice out there just milling around the property. That's quite good. I liked seeing the Debentons bats feeding around the water. That was really cool. But I think the best one-off sequence we get in the episode is actually the mayflies. The mayflies are very, very good here because it takes place at the same time as like a bank holiday party. Like you see the people in the background just, drinking around a table, and here these mayflies are just fighting for their lives. We basically follow the female mayflies. This one female mayfly in particular, getting out of the water, and she's got to, molt, and they get attacked by damselflies. The damselflies are really good here as well because they're portrayed as very efficient predators, and that's not really an angle you usually see either. I think we all know that dragonflies and damselflies are pretty good predators, for the niche they're in. And you tend to think of dragonflies, damselflies, and mayflies as being kind of interchangeable, but this sequence did a really good job of showing you the difference. Damselflies are much bigger and are, definitely pretty efficient predators when it comes to catching mayflies, so that was really good. I also didn't really know, or at least I don't think I knew, that mayflies had a second molt. That was interesting, I didn't know about that either. This episode does a really good job of showing you the passage of the seasons. As I say, we do follow the rise and fall of the river, and it does a really good job of showing you the peril that some animals are in, especially the bank voles, and the kingfishers as well, because their nest is almost submerged by the water when it rises, so that's really good as well. And I think it's good that we started and ended on the kingfishers as well, because they're probably the most, attractive animals along rivers, and are probably one of the most iconic birds along rivers. And then we get the diaries as well, but the people kind of filming the otters, I guess. But it's kind of everything. It was just fun watching them put camera traps out and then filming the otters in the way they did, especially them going for the ducklings was really good. So yeah, I really like that. This episode is pretty good. It's a really good start of this series. I wasn't really expecting the series to be much. I wasn't expecting anything exciting from it. And to be fair, it kind of is, but it was more comforting than anything else. British gardens, just, these really small stories taking place in someone's back garden. I really liked it. Yeah, this is a really good episode. So yeah, let me know in the comments below what you thought of this video. What do you think of this episode? If you saw it, let me know. And yeah, I'll be doing the next one next week, so look forward to that. And yeah, as ever, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe or don't if you don't want to. It's perfectly fine. And I'll see you next time, and goodbye.